Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to be answering a letter from somebody who's reeling after her boyfriend broke up with her when she came out as a sex worker. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not. We are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right, today's letter is coming to us from Sad and Confused, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from Just Date Me in all caps. Dear Sam and Sierra, I'm writing for advice or to hear how you guys digest this heck of a confusing situation. I came out as a sex worker to a guy I was dating, and he ended things. I, 28, she, her, pan, had been seeing this man, 33, he, him, straight, for around 3 months. We met on Hinge, and the chemistry was so amazing. I hadn't felt a connection like this in years, and he verbally reciprocated that sentiment. Texting every day and going on cute dates, he put in a lot of effort. We had fun together, felt like we really understood each other, had sex for hours, and opened up about things such as family history faster than I usually would with someone. We never discussed explicitly what we were looking for in a dating situation. Personally, I was still figuring out whether or not I could see this going somewhere serious that involved exclusivity and commitment. One night, I came out to him as a sex worker. I told him I used to do escorting and was considering returning to it to help pay for my upcoming grad school. The evening I told him this, everything was fine. I tried to be open and let him ask as many questions as he would like. He told me he also has a friend who does this and that he does not judge. I went home that evening happy. The next morning, I wake up to a series of texts, the gist of them ending with, "I can't do this anymore, come get your things." Cue a week-long, dragged-out, flipping-flopping anxiety spiral for him. All around great time. He claimed that he could not see us having a healthy relationship going forward due to my, quote, disconnect with intimacy. Throughout this conversation, he said multiple times that he was not judging me, then proceeded to say some horror-phobic things, i.e., I don't understand how you got into this. It's not like you came from poverty. And even though we aren't seeing each other, I hope you don't go back to that life because it cannot be good for your mental health. He was mad I didn't tell him sooner. The entire time, I felt like he wasn't listening to me. He kept saying, I thought we were on the same page, but I guess we weren't. I told him that my relationship with sex as a service provider is totally different than with someone I am romantically attracted to. He kept saying that we inherently view sex differently. But I would counter with, I view sex the same as you view sex with me. And just because you don't understand my sensibility about how I can do it as a service, that should not be an irreconcilable difference, in my opinion. I was trying to respect his validity in not wanting to date a sex worker if he doesn't want to, but his arguing irked me. He kept saying that we do not want the same things and do not view sex the same, and therefore we cannot have a healthy relationship going forward. My response to this was that we did want the same things. I think we do view it in the context of a romantic relationship, and if he doesn't want to see where things would go, then that's fine, but stop claiming that we aren't on the same page about what we want and how we view this connection, because we are, but that he just didn't care to find out anymore. During the week, he was distressed and not reaching out to his friends and went on an alcohol and coke binge for at least 3 days. I did not know about this unhealthy coping mechanism, as he was always upfront about being in therapy for years and emotionally close to his friends. He made me feel like a horrible person. After the initial 3 days, he came around and admitted that he was not acting like an adult in this situation. About 1 week after I came out to him, we decided to talk on the phone with the boundary of not bringing up this current fight. The next morning, we were both on the same page that this didn't seem to be working anymore, as being with me was crossing a boundary for him, and that didn't sit right with either of us. We decided to go no contact with the caveat of maybe we can be friends in the future or catch up in a couple months. I basically said that if you can get past this and still want to date me, then please do reach out. Another important piece of context, when we first met, he said he had been hardly drinking, not partying, and was in therapy, and in general, taking care of his mental health. When we started dating, his mental health had rapidly been deteriorating due to his own stuff he had going on. I started to brace myself for him to end things, saying he had to focus on himself, as it was getting hard on me when he would cancel the last minute to focus on himself, abandonment issues, and my disorganized attachment style. Still, of course, I wanted him to be able to take as much time for himself as he needed to focus on his mental health. Yet, it was becoming unfair to me to try to support him while being consistently disappointed that he couldn't show up in a way he or I wanted to. I don't really know where to go from here. So far, no contact has been good. It's been 1 week, though. I can't help but feel like he will reach out in 2 weeks or 2 months and at least apologize in person for the way he treated me. I'm having a hard time not holding my breath. After he talks to his therapist about this and his friends, he will reach out again and want to rekindle things. The way he acted at the end cemented for me in my heart of hearts that this is not someone I want to be in a serious relationship with, but I don't require commitment or exclusivity for a meaningful connection, and this one felt hella meaningful. I feel shaken. At the worst of it, it feels like his finding out about something that happened in my past shattered his perfect image of me. It's hard not to feel like my perceived impurity took away my potential wife status and he cast me aside. I don't want to date someone who runs as soon as I don't fit into a box they put me in, or when I fall from a pedestal they put me on. We both came from Christian upbringings, and I've tried really hard to dismantle the shame-based relationship with sexuality that came with that. I still struggle to feel proud of my queer identity. I find complete acceptance from my queer friends and my non-queer femme friends about sex work. I also wonder if dating a queer person would mean they take my sex work status less personally on average. I really appreciate this podcast and the work that you two do. I have been listening for a couple years now, and it has really helped me become a more emotionally mature person and create a better perspective on complex issues. Listening often can feel like an emotional hug. Aw, thank you both.
All right, sad and confused. I'm so sorry that you're feeling so sad, and I'm so sorry that you're feeling so confused. I think the experience that you had here where you disclosed something about your past and the way that you interact with sexuality and with intimacy, and then having that kind of blow up in your face or be rejected or misunderstood by the person that you're dating is just so challenging, right? Because it feels like we've exposed a little bit of our tender selves to somebody, and then they sort of pull back in rejection or fear or misunderstanding. And that's such a painful thing to experience. So I'm so sorry that you had I'm so sorry that you had the vulnerability of sharing this part of your experience around this, and that he didn't handle it well. Because Sierra and I both know that folks who engage with sex work are very capable of having meaningful and healthy relationships with people outside of or within that sex work. We know that the fact that you did this doesn't mean that you have mental health issues, or that, you are somehow or that you are somehow like so emotionally or like physically impoverished that you couldn't participate, like that you would have to participate in sex work. We know that sex work is really complicated in lots of different ways that involve systems of misogyny and power and classism and all of those different things. And we also know that folks who participate in sex work can do so consensually and in a way that feels empowering to them, which is really great. And we also know that there are a lot of folks out there who view sex work as being bad or dirty or something else, and that are going to be challenged by the reality that folks do sex work because they want to and because it feels like a good job for them to be doing, and that they experience a level of empowerment in it. So all of that to say, I'm sorry that this person reacted so poorly to this, but we want to make sure that you know that Sierra and I see your past and potentially your future, and that we trust you when you say that this is what you want to be doing, and that it is something that makes you feel like you are empowered, right? That you get to do what you want to do. We're going to get into some advice, some maybe perspective shifts around how you want to understand what happened to you in this relationship, and a bunch more affirmation and love, because we know that this is a really challenging thing to go through, and we want you to feel loved in this moment. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. But before that, we're going to take a quick break.
All right, my darling, welcome back. Thank you so much for trusting us with this letter, for listening. I think that the foundation of what I want to talk about today, there's an underlying foundation that I want you to know in your heart of hearts, which is that ideologically, Sam and I agree with you. Ideologically, we can see how you have you have a caretaking service provider relationship to sex that is different and separate than your romantic relationship to sex. Like, that makes clear sense to me. Like, you could have explained it in a fifth of the words that you explained it in, and we would still understand. Yeah, oh, that makes sense so much to me. That is important to me because I want to talk about how your ex, even though his ideological approach to sex work disagrees with me, and my opinions of sex work and my opinions of intimacy and sex and everything, I want you to see what Sam and I see, which is that your ex has his view of intimacy and sex, and he views it as something that cannot Venn diagram itself with acts of service sex. That is his lived truth. And that's why he's weirdly doubling down and saying, we don't see it the same way. We don't see it the same way, because his definition of intimacy in sexual relationships is one in which sex work and sex for service they don't coexist together. So he's saying, my definition of blue is X, Y, and Z. And you're saying, but my definition of blue, that's not true, because my definition of blue is X, Y, and Z and A, right? So don't you see that they're the same letters? Don't you see how X, Y, and Z overlap, and I just have this extra A, and that they don't cancel each other out? But in his mind, he's saying X, Y, and Z plus A cannot equal X, Y, and Z, right? He again, I want you to know that Sam and I we see the blueprints, we see how this went down, and we ideologically, fundamentally agree with you. And we even agree, not just our perspectives on intimacy and sex work and whatnot. We agree in a argumentative way, in a worldview way, that it is possible for me to believe something holy and true, and someone else to believe something holy and true and like-minded as I do, and something else, right? We see so perfectly what's happening here. And also, unfortunately, you are trying to argue a truth to a man who has a different truth than you. And I think something's happening here that it highlights two different parts of Sam and I's differing personalities. Something's happening here where when somebody who I don't even when somebody's mean to me, but I want them to love me, I have the attachment that I'm oh my God, please don't leave me. Please don't prove to me that I am unlovable and unvaluable, even though I didn't actually want to be with you in the first place. And in this example, this man is fundamentally disrespecting you by saying those whorephobic things. There's so many things wrong with those statements that would turn me off to him. And also I too would be wait, please don't reject me. Please don't tell me, please don't prove to me that I am unlovable. I would fall deeper into that relationship, even though that person was treating me poorly. Whereas
It's like, you're clearly going through something, so I will help you fix that thing, and then you will love me again.
Yes,
absolutely.
Let me change everything about myself and my opinion to suit you or whatever. So I see a little of that.
You're like having a mental health crisis, so we'll fix the mental health crisis, and then you will remember that you love me, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, and then you can deal with like dehumanizing me. So I see a little of that in there, where you're like, I see you clinging to something that I'm not sure you want to cling to, right? And I'm also seeing you do it in this way, the way that Sam would do it.
Yeah, which is also like, there's a sort of prescribed reason that you're doing this, and I know why that reason is, and I'm not actually upset at the fact that you're leaving me. I'm upset that you're leaving me for the wrong reason, right? Like, now we're having an argument about what we know to be true or not to be true, and I know that I'm right, so you can't give me this argument because I know I'm right, and so it doesn't make any sense, so why are you doing this, right? Like, 100%, right? Where Sierra's like, he's telling you that X, Y, and Z can't exist with A, and you're saying, but X, Y, and Z does exist without A, and I'm just adding A, right? Like, and I can totally understand. I would be in the same way, where I'd be like, no, what you're saying is wrong, though. Like, what you are not understanding what I'm saying. Like, we're going back and forth in this, like, arguing about like some sort of ideology here, as opposed to being like, oh shit, this dude said some pretty awful things to me, and I would be okay if he said things in this way, but because he didn't say them in this way, I'm going to focus on the semantics of it, right? I'm going to focus on the ideology of it. I'm going to focus on who's right in this, who's more right than the other person, as opposed to hearing what this person is saying to you, which is that he does not want to be with you, right? Like, that's like, regardless of the like factual evidence here, what this person is saying to you, that your brand of sex and his brand of sex are incompatible to him, right? Doesn't mean that that is true in the world, right? Doesn't mean that if he didn't try a little harder, he might be able to find a way to understand and be okay with it, right? Like, what he's saying to you is that this isn't working for me because of XYZ reasons. And you're saying, well, Z reason isn't valid, so therefore you still want to be with me. And I'm telling you, he does not. Like, he is telling you with his words that this type of relationship isn't compatible with him. And I know you want him to like say out loud or explicitly, I don't want to be in a relationship with a sex worker. I don't think he's ever going to say that. I don't think he has the words. I don't think has the capability. Like, I don't think you're going to get the exact right thing you want to hear for you to believe his experience. But I want you to believe the experience that he's telling you, because he's telling you that he doesn't want to be in relationship with you because he doesn't think that the sex that you have with him could be the sex that he wants to have with you. I know that that's not true. I believe you.
Yes, and he's wrong.
It's true. It's 100% true for him. It is 1000% true for him. He is incapable of seeing it differently. And I don't want you to have to be with someone where you have to somehow convince them to not believe something they believe to be true in order to be with you. Like, that's not the time and energy I want you to be spending. I want you to be spending it on other things.
As Sam was talking, I floated back to a much less healed time of my life.
Okay. I love it when we do this.
And I was thinking about my relationship with my ex, who he was, let's say, he was more interested in casual sex than I was. Truthfully, I have no problem with casual sex. I just don't like strangers that much. So,
Sure.
Whatever, that's neither here nor there. But he, would have lots of sexual partners in lots of different ways. And I'm looking back on this time that we were together, and I was deeply threatened by that. And we don't have to, on this episode, unpack purity culture and sexism and like the plague of over monogamizing everything. Like, we've done that enough on this show. But, back then I was so insecure, and I found security in the argument. Well, we have sex like this, and then you have sex like that, and it's the same sex. So how do you value that? Like, I had a hard time. This is honestly, we talked about our anniversary on Monday's episode, and we talked about how much we've grown in the last 6 years. I have grown so much in my understanding of how my insecurity manifests and how it's literally just trying to control people in like a weird puritanical way. Anyway, so back then I used to be like, oh, well, how could it be the same thing? And I'm offering this only to say that I'm sure this person is finding comfort in his logic because this is uncomfortable for him. But his logic, we see that his logic is flawed to us and our worldviews, because we know that people are capable of having all different types of intimacy and connection and whatever. But his insecurity is telling him that you could never have a practical, unemotional, simple service relationship to sex and have that wonderful, mind-blowing, intimate, emotional sex with him. His insecurity is saying, oh my God, how could that be possible? But we know that so many things are possible. More than one thing can be true at the same time, yada, yada, yada. This is all just to offer you some understanding for him. But what I want you to take home, what I want you to deposit in the bank is that this man has a different worldview than you. And your job here is not actually to convince him how lacking or how short-sighted his worldview is. Your job here is to say, you can't accept all of me, and all of me is worthy of love. I'm going to leave this situation and seek out love that can see and value and cherish all of me, right? I think what's happening here is, like, you said it to us, you're like, this is not somebody I want to be with. But I think just like the audacity of him saying X, Y, and Z is not X, Y, and Z plus A. You're like, but they're the same fucking letters. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're getting caught up in what you could be afraid could be true, like you said at the end of your letter, the idea that like he saw the true you and now he doesn't see you as worthy anymore. I know why your anxiety is telling you that. You're like, that's literally what happened, Sierra. But we know it's just because this person's truth doesn't align with your truth and your values and your lived experience, and therefore he is not for you. So it is actually that he revealed himself to you, right?
Exactly.
It's not the other way
That's
around.
We need to flip it, right? We need to flip this, which is to say, like, he saw this vulnerable part of you and that made you less worthy. And we need to flip this and say, like, he's the type of person who attaches worthiness to purity, right? Like, and that's not somebody that you need to convince to love you, right? Like, that's not somebody you want to be with if somebody is connecting those two things together, right? And the same way where it's like, we've been talking about like how to sort of hold his worldview as being opposed to yours. I also want to hold that he's not understanding or seeing or experiencing your worldview either, right? Like, he's not receiving and believing what's true to you. And you want to be with somebody who's able to see what you are saying, to hold the complexity of you and believe you in your own experiences. And this man is telling you he's not willing or capable of doing that, right? He's tying your sense of worth in his head, not your actual sense of worth, because your sense of worth, your actual worth is not in any way tied to the quote unquote purity of your sexuality, right? Your worth is inherent. Your worth is there regardless of what you do. Your worth is worth seeing and holding and admiring, rather than saying, oh, it's tarnished in some way because of the service that you provide to other people. Right. And that's what he's doing. Like, I want to like put this back into the place where it actually is, which is not you and whether you're right, whether you're worthy, whether you are
right. Because it's not about right or wrong. Yep.
Lovable. Right. But instead saying in the other way, he is choosing to believe something about you that isn't true, and telling you that untruth that he has decided is true about you makes you less worthy of being in relationship with him. And that is not a person that you want to be with, right? That is not a person that you want to spend time and energy and love on, And there are people out there in this world who are going to be able to see and hold the complexity of you and see your worthiness in that complexity. You've talked about this, right? Your friends that are queer, your friends that are femme presenting, right? Like those folks are able to hold this, right? Are able to see this experience in you. And like, remember that when you're looking at this man and trying desperately to convince him of something that he is refusing to believe is true, even though you know that it is, right?
Right.
Why are you putting so much time and attention into trying to convince a person who's told you that he's never going to believe your experience of sex or of the world? Like that is a place where you're just going to be able, it's an emotional black hole, right? Like you're just going to keep throwing love and energy into it and never receive anything in. And I want you to turn around. I want you to look at this like community of loving people who's like, no, you are worthy regardless of how much sex you have or whether or not people pay you for it, right?
Or
like,
what kind of sex you have. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, right? Like that is, I want you to see that and hold that, because you're worthy of also finding a romantic, a physical, a spiritual partner or partners who are also able to see the truth that so many of us around you are seeing, and that this one person, this literal one person who I know that you had an amazing connection with, but is literally one person on this planet who can't seem to hold that complexity in his head for whatever reason.
Yeah. And, a beautiful way you can think about this, albeit like deeply painful, is that he has every right to set up the boundaries within his relationships. Like, this. He has a right to say, I don't want to be in a romantic relationship with someone who has sex like this, whether or not we agree with it or not, because I fundamentally would want to challenge him on that ideology. And also, it is his right. And so you can say, you can go do that somewhere else. I'm not going to spend my time convincing you that I am worth loving as I am. Instead, there are plenty of people, like Sam said, out there ready to love you, accept you as is right now. Don't get me wrong. All of this sucks. All of it hurts, right? You were excited. This person was exciting to you. You feel like this connection is meaningful, and it feels infuriating, frustrating, disappointing that this is what caused its demise. Shift the perspective and say, okay, this was revealed to me. I was revealing one layer at a time, and I didn't get to it until now, and now I know. And now I know this is not where I want to put energy in. It's unfortunate that I won't feel understood and held by him the way I thought I could.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All this to say, we are sorry that all of this is happening. We just want to make sure that you know that you are absolutely worthy of love and kindness and support. And that we just want you to be able to move forward in that knowledge, because Sierra and I love you deeply, and we know that you are able to hold complexities in ways that maybe other people aren't. And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, thank you so much for writing. We love you. We hope that this helps.
All right. That brings us to the blind date segment of our show. Every Friday at the end of the week, we like to do our blind date, which is something that we love, that we want to set you up with. And this week, we are sending you home with
a television show called The Traitors. It is on Peacock. It is this amazing show where they bring together like 24 people into a castle in Scotland, and then they basically play a game where 3 of those people become traitors who are trying to murder people off so that they can win all the money, and the traitor and the faithful, the people who aren't traitors, are trying to like find out who those traitors are. It's such a simple, beautiful premise that makes the show so amazing because the stakes are so low. It's just
Cute.
like they're like going through these missions trying to figure out these things. It's just like intrigue. People are like blindly wrong about who they think they're as the traitors, but they are like gung-ho about it. They like the rules like sometimes change as well, so folks are like thrown off, and it's just like it feels
Cute.
very like fun and quirky. It's hosted by Alan Cumming, who is Scottish and also like just a fantastic sort of campy host. Like he plays everything 100% serious all the time, even as he's like asking them to do absolutely absurd things. And what's fun is also that in the first season, half the folks are like reality people. So like people who have been on Survivor or Big Brother or Housewives. And then the second season is all reality people. And it's just fun to see people who like know how to do this type of stuff, like do it really well with each other and also do it really poorly with each other too. Like it's
God, I love that.
It's so fun. There are people on the show where you're like, you are wrong 100% of the time and you are gung-ho about that being wrong every time, even though like you keep voting off people who are not traitors. It's delightful. Cute. We are having so much fun with it. And I love watching like really intense and like really dramatic things and things that are, and like this is just so like it fills my cup because it's just like so fun to watch. So that. Check it out. It's called The Traitors. It is on Peacock. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those monthly office hours. The next one is coming up on July 29th. Nope. The next one is coming up on July 28th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central. So check that out. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DM, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music recording, producing all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his music and podcasts and his awesome new mustache. And remember, he did not see something in you that made you unlovable. He revealed himself as someone who is incapable of loving you the way you deserve. And if all else fails,
just break up.